welcome everybody, and my name is Ruth Merttens, and I am the Educational Director of the Hamilton Trust. So I assume everybody knows about the Hamilton Trust. We are a small educational charity. Our sole aim is to help teachers teach and children learn. We have no other aim. We get no government finance. So make those two things really clear. We provide weekly plans for maths and English, a whole load of topics and loads of other things as well. And we are about to provide an assessment tracker to help schools keep track of pupils on the new curriculum in what we hope is a really teacher-friendly way, and also to show progress. Very hard to show progress on the new curriculum when it's all end-related goals. So we've put some effort into that. So keep your eye open on the site. It will, as everything is on the Hamilton site, be free to those schools who are Hamilton schools. Okay, we have a new curriculum. It is now statutory for all year groups, and most schools are kind of getting to grips with it. Apparently the minister doesn't like the phrase the mastery curriculum, but it is a mastery curriculum. That is to say, it is a curriculum which is very different from the curriculum that we had before. How is it different? Well, it's different in three ways. First of all, in terms of the content. In relation to maths, it goes a lot further, a lot faster, and the pace is much steeper than the curriculum we had before. So I always say a way of viewing it is that pretty much everything that was in year 7 and 8 related to number is now in year 5 or 6. I can't think of anything which hasn't moved from years 7 and 8 to years 5 and 6 in the new curriculum. Pretty much everything that was in year 6 is now in year 4. So you can think of it as a 2-year sort of hike, if you like. Secondly, it goes much faster. The pace is much more steep. And thirdly, it's much fuller, has a lot more in it. So it's a very crowded curriculum. You know, and certain things have got a lot of press, haven't they? Roman numerals, imperial units, there's some other things. This is a curriculum which is different in style completely from the curriculum we had before. The image that NCETM and DFE are using is an image I'm not overly fond of, and I think probably most people have heard it, but it is a metaphor that's perhaps useful. It was, they said the previous curriculum was like an escalator. Have you heard this one? So all the children were on the escalator, but they were all standing on a different step. And the escalator's going up, and all the children are rising, but all at different levels. This curriculum, we're told, is like a lift. So we all get into the lift, and we're all at the same level, and we're all rising. Easy to say, isn't it? Especially for the Minister for Schools. Rather less easy for those of us in the classroom. I was talking to some teachers last week in Devon, and one of them said to me, Ruth, I think our lift is broken. Another teacher, perhaps a little bit more depressed, said, I think my lift is going down. I think, yes, it is easy to say, but I can't wave a magic wand and make all your children immediately at the same level. Put up your hand if you have a class in which you think all the children are at precisely the same level in maths. Well, quite. The third difference is that because this is a curriculum where we are expected to master skills, it is age-related skills, it is a curriculum where we're all supposed to be on the same page at the same time. And it is a bit more like a driving test. So I don't know anybody here who has had to either take their test, you all look so young, probably all taken your test within the last 5 years. But if not, maybe you've helped somebody else have to pass their drive. Has anybody had to do it? It's all the people with grey hairs in the room. Who've had to sit next to somebody while they take their, I can see there are a few sympathetic glances here. Had to sit next to somebody when they learn to drive, yeah? And it's a tortuous process. You get white knuckles. But the thing is, when you do that and they go to take their test, on the day they take their test, the examiner is not the slightest bit interested in the progress they've made. That is not a question the driving test examiner asks. All they want to know is, do they meet the criteria? Do they change down through the gears before turning right? Do they, look in the mirror before a traffic lights? That's all the driving test examiner wants to know. Do they meet the expectations? So the driving test examiner is seriously only interested in the criteria. Are the criteria met? And that's what this curriculum is like. Do children meet age-related criteria? Not how far have they progressed, not have they made 3 sub-levels of progress in 2 years, whatever. That is not the way this curriculum will be judged. It is different in kind. And I think it's taken a long time before people have actually realised that levels have gone. I mean, I know that some younger teachers, especially students, are coming to me and they're going, Ruth, how on earth do we teach without levels? And I'm saying, well, some of us are old enough to remember that we taught really rather well without levels. It was a long time ago. But the fact is that actually levels are gone. That means that it's very difficult to see how we will assess children. What happens about the children who are not making those age-related targets? What happens about how you judge schools? Is it on the percentage making age-related targets? Well, obviously it is. But will your school have to make, 90% of the children to 100% of the targets, and your school has to make 80% of the children to 90%? You see what I mean? There's some questions, aren't there? And specifically, what does happen about those children who are simply not able to access at this moment those targets in their age? And that's not just the children who are running a little behind or who's struggling. Every child in year 4 has not done the new curriculum for years 1, 2 and 3 before they get into year 4. Do you see what I mean? Because it's a new curriculum. The year 5, this year's year 5, have the shortest straw ever, don't they? They had not done the new curriculum when they started year 5 this year. And that year 5 is 2 years above what they've been taught to. So inevitably, year 5 teachers are going to have done what we call infill teaching. Teaching to catch up with where they're supposed to be on the new curriculum. Do you follow me? So that's a really challenging thing for children and for teachers. And I don't want children to drop out of maths and to start hating it and to feel failures. They are only, after all, 9 and 10. So we've got a challenge there, haven't we? To move from the old to the new curriculum in 1 year. Secondary schools are luckier, it phases in. But that hasn't happened here. So it is a different sort of curriculum. And there are some other policies at the moment. We obviously have 2 major initiatives on part of the DFE. At a time of austerity, £11 million has been put into bringing Chinese teachers over to the UK. It's a question mark whether maybe you might have spent it in the same way. But it is the case that we also have what's called the textbook initiative. So initiative, the Minister for Schools doesn't believe that English schools are using enough textbooks in teaching maths in primary. I would want to make 2 statements. The first is that the reason for the new initiatives is because we are told England doesn't do very well on international comparisons. This is not true if you look at the international comparisons for primary education. In primary education, we do really well on the international comparisons. If you look at the figures for the children aged 9 in the TIMSS international comparisons, England does very, very well. In 1995, we were 17th, and in 2007, we were 7th. We were the second most improved country in the world. England currently does very well on the international comparisons for primary children. I've said that 3 times. I want you to say it to yourself 3 times before you go to bed. Because if you read the papers, you wouldn't know that, would you? And actually, primary education, primary maths education is not broken. And I grew up with the legend, if it's not broken, don't fix it. It's a more questionable point about secondary, because at 15, England does not do as well in the international comparisons if we are looking at the PISA study, which is the one that's always reported. The PISA study applies to 15-year-olds, so it's really important to get that across. Secondly, there are some questions about why, I mean, I'll just say this, England does better for primary maths than any other country in Europe apart from Finland. And I always say there are only 8 people in Finland and they're all middle class. So, you know, don't feel bad. It is also true that in the last set of tests, Flemish Belgium did better than England. But other than that, we are top in Europe. Now, the Pacific Rim countries do, it is true, do better than us, both at primary and at secondary. Taking the maths from another culture, taking maths pedagogy from another culture and importing it into England may not have the effects, the desired effects, that the minister hopes. The question would be, is it the case that we can identify precisely what in the Pacific Rim countries makes them do really well? But that is a highly contested issue. John Jerrim of the University of Education in London did a study where he looked at children who had emigrated from the Pacific Rim countries to Australia. There's a lot of emigration from the Pacific Rim countries to Australia. Australia's education system is very similar to the education system in England. There is no state textbook. There is little state control. And where it is, it's state, not country. So it's very similar, mixed bag to England. So he looked at how those children did when their schooling took place in Australia. The results are very interesting. The children were, on average, 2.5 years ahead of their native Australian counterparts. That's a lot, isn't it? They did, in other words, astonishingly well. Now, you might have some thoughts as to why those children do very well, even when they're not being educated in their home countries. They also do well in this country, as it happens. Why do you think those children do very, very well? What would be your reasons? It is interesting, isn't it? You can all make some very sensible suggestions. Parents, the ethos, cultural factors to do with the family and the general ethos. So if I start looking at differences, specifically, say, with Singapore and England. In Singapore, we have a highly competitive education system with high-stakes tests starting very young. In England, we do not have that. In England, primary children are expected to enjoy primary education, are they not? I personally think that's a really good thing. You know, I'd quite like it, you know, if teachers enjoyed primary education. Perhaps I and the minister are not at one here, but it is the case that I think it's excellent that my children and my grandchildren enjoy primary education. I think that's an absolutely great thing. If children are not enjoying their primary education, their parents are beating a path to your door, are they not? They're coming to you and they're going, Jimmy's crying on the way to school. And you can't go, tough, so am I. You know, that's not an answer, is it? You know? So we don't have the same culture. We have an inclusive culture in which, to the best of our ability, in every primary school in England, every child is valued. And we try to make sure that all children feel a success, not a failure, do we not? So that is the ethos of English primary education. Personally, it's an ethos I utterly value. It's why I entered primary education. It's why I continue in it. I think it's fantastic. There are other differences, and this one I think is slightly regrettable. Education is not universally valued by all the subcultures in England, is it? Some of your parents undoubtedly value education. Some probably do not. And you probably work really hard to try and get them to value education, do you not? But it wouldn't be true that, as in Singapore, education has a very high value. Very, very high. I wish that was true in England, don't you? But unfortunately, we can't just wave a wand and make it true. It just isn't a fact. We don't have corporal punishment in English primary schools. We don't hold children back if they don't make the right levels. There are many, many differences which are cultural rather than educational to the context in which we educate primary children. And I think those differences are highly pertinent. However, I do think that it is definitely the case that we have things to learn from the Pacific Rim countries, from Shanghai, from Singapore, from how other teachers teach children maths. I think that's a good idea. We can always learn, can we not? What I want to do today is to outline 5 things, typical primary teacher, 5 things, that I think we can take away today that will help us to deliver the new curriculum, that will help us to satisfy Ofsted and the DFE that we have understood how the new curriculum is to be implemented, but will also preserve what I value, and I believe you value, about English primary education. So the first thing here is that I think in England, actually, we do have a short suit, as it were. We also have a strong suit. Our strong suit, generally, in education, is creativity, originality, innovation, critical thinking, critical reasoning. All of those are strong suits. Where do Apple recruit their designers? Which is the capital of the media industry? Do you see what I mean? England punches above its weight in some areas. However, we have a short suit. Our short suit, it seems to me, is memorisation. And so the first thing that I want to think about changing is our attitude to memorisation. I don't think this is because of teachers or schools. If you read some newspapers, you would think that that was the case, but it isn't. I have never, if you sit in the pub on a Friday night, you will hear people saying, well, trouble is, teachers don't teach the flipping times tables anymore, do they, you know? In the old days, they used to teach times tables, it was all fine, you know. Well, I've never been in a school which doesn't teach the times tables. Do you teach the times tables? Yes. Do you hammer them home? Yes. Do you do everything in your power to make sure children know them? Yes. Do they still not know their 3 times table when it gets to year 6? And you know what? Every year there's an argument between the year 2 teacher and the year 3 teacher. And people have heard me say this before, and I confess to bias. I'm usually the year 2 teacher, so I'm a bit biased. But the fact is, every year in September there's an argument because flipping year 3 teacher, year 3 teacher? Yeah, you see, you can tell, can't you? Year 3 teacher comes in and she says, oh, I can't stand it, they just don't know their number bonds. And the year 2 teacher says, well, they knew them when they left me. Now, you know, that's true, isn't it? What's happened between year 2 and year 3? Yes, flipping summer holidays, exactly. But this actually goes much deeper. When I first came to school, and as you can tell, I'm ancient. My grandchildren tell me this. I'm ancient. So when I first came to school, yes, there were cards, but when I first came to school, I probably knew about 5 or 6 prayers off by heart. I certainly knew between 10 and 12 nursery rhymes off by heart. Not because I was clever or because I was holy, because everybody did. Absolutely everybody did. Possibly some of you did. How many children enter nursery or reception knowing 20 chants off by heart? Yeah, none. A lot of people will say none, and it will be true. And so it will vary from school to school, but it will be few. When I was 15, I probably knew about 10 or so phone numbers off by heart, because I used to run home from school and phone all my friends before my parents got in from work. Didn't you? You know, you'd just seen them at school, you ran home and you rang them all up. And then when your parents came in, you obviously put the phone down. Now, you know, I never looked up any of my friends' numbers. I wouldn't even have known how. I knew all their numbers off by heart. Probably you did too. Put up your hand if you can say with complete honesty that you know more than 4 mobile numbers off by heart. The fact of the matter is that it's very interesting, isn't it? Most of us do not need to know mobile numbers. If I want to exchange mobile numbers with you, it is the flick of a button. It passes through the brain of neither of us. I teach a secondary maths class every year, GCSE, and when I teach that class we always exchange mobile numbers so we can tell each other about the homework and so forth and so on. And when I say to them, I need your mobile number, they all get their phone out and they click it on because they do not know their own number. And I say to them, don't you even know your own mobile number? And they're like, no, why should I? And if there happens to be a girl in the class who does, they're like, loser. It is the fact that actually routine memorization is no longer a part of daily life. The only memorization that children do will be within the 4 walls of your school. Memory is like anything else. Use it or lose it. And the 15-year-olds I teach, to quite a horrifying extent, have lost their memories. It isn't that they won't memorize, it's that they can't memorize. That's a very serious deficiency. And I put it to you that the children that you are teaching now are not memorizing as a routine part of daily life. They're simply not. And that's a serious issue. This is a problem that is not created by teachers, but it is a problem for teachers. Because we have to have children memorizing. If they are not, I'll tell you this, we have no time in this new curriculum to be reteaching the flipping 3 times table in year 4 and year 5 and year 6. I need to know that once that has been taught, it stays taught. I need those number bonds to be rock solid. Rock solid. I need the children to be memorizing as their Pacific Rim counterparts are memorizing. So how do we do this? Because we do not have a culture in which that's happening. Most children are not learning prayers or chants or sutras. Most of them are not. So how do we do this? Well, we do not have time in our maths lessons to be spending them chanting the flipping 3 times table or the number bonds to 10. We have way too much else to do in our maths lessons to do with teaching and learning, really good teaching and learning. So we cannot give our maths lessons over to chanting or to memorization. Well, put up your hand if you're a junior teacher here, or have ever taught juniors. Okay. In the infants, bear in mind I've got lots of infant teachers. In the infants, we do 10 minutes a day phonics. Yeah? Yeah? Do you agree? Yeah. At least. All right, half an hour more. But the fact is, we were doing this before Michael Gove told us to, but don't tell him because he gets upset. So the fact is that we do our 10 minutes a day or whatever phonics. In the juniors, we don't do that because phonics is built into the English teaching in a different way. So it follows, logically, that the juniors have 10 minutes a day spare. It's true, isn't it? You can't deny it. So that means with that 10 minutes, you do quick maths. What is quick maths? It is not attached to the maths lesson. That's really important. It's daily. That's really important. It is a daily session, not attached to the maths lesson, which is focused on memorization. It's not mental maths. It is making sure that all those skills stay memorized. It is all what I call no work sums. Double 16. 1.8, oh, very good. 1.8 plus 0.2. You know, do you see where I'm coming from? It's all those things where if you're having to do any work, something's gone wrong. If you're having to expend a single calorie, something's gone wrong. 346 minus 40. You shouldn't be having to expend a single calorie. Do you see where I'm coming from? Now, keeping all those memorized facts truly memorized is really, really important. I'll tell you what, you have no chance of your children making these age-related targets in the numbers that the government desires unless you have cracked the memorization. So that means that we have to do the 10 minutes a day quick maths. And just to help you, we wrote a nice little math scheme of 10 minutes a day quick maths, all things you need to practice, and put them into lovely animations. I wrote these for Abacus. But very kindly, Pearson, who are represented here today, have allowed Hamilton Trust to put them on their website. So the quick maths activities are on the Hamilton Trust website. You just have to look for them. They're in the left-hand column. And those quick maths activities for the term that you need them for your age range are there. You might not want to use them. You might want to do your own activities. I don't really care. I think that's absolutely fine, but at least it gives you a starting point. And they are really nice, and they are daily, and they are short. And unlike the phonics, this is just 10 minutes. It's not half an hour. It is just 10 minutes. And on a Friday, you do a little driving test and assess how they've got on, which is rather nice. And in all the schools I work with, the children compete against their personal best. So we have our PB. And that's a really nice notion, because when you're competing against your PB, you know, she might have got 19 out of 20 last week, and she's got 19 out of 20 this week. She's really, you can tell, can't you? She's very good. Unfortunately, she didn't. She got 9 out of 10. But this week, she got 11 out of 10, and that beat her personal best. So she's on my wall as beating her personal best. She got 19 out of 20 again. She didn't beat her personal best. Do you see what I mean? It's quite nice competing against yourself, because kids like that. It's what they do on computer games. They compete against themselves. It's a very effective form of trying to get better. So the quick maths. So the first thing I think we can learn is that actually it does matter that we have good, robust bank of memorized facts. The second thing we can learn from the Pacific Rim countries and the way they teach is that we need to have a developmental approach to the consistent development of models and images. We need a developmental approach to the use of models and images. The problem for us is that we all use models and images in teaching maths, but we are haphazard. Do you know what I mean? What happens is that, you know, she's been off on a course and it was Numicon and it was fantastic. She really loved it. And to beat all, she got a free pack of Numicon. So in her class, they're using Numicon. When they go up from her class to her class, she didn't go on the course. And she did kind of pay attention in the staff meeting. But, you know, she didn't get the free pack. She's not really interested. She really loves the bead bar. Do you know what I mean? She does everything on the bead bar, loves it. Whereas when they go up from her class to her class, she hasn't got the bead bar, she doesn't know anything about Numicon. She's always used Deans. She thinks Deans are wonderful. She's really wedded to them. That's what she's done for the last 20 years, and that's what she's going to do now. So that's fine. You look far too young for that, but still, never mind. And then they go up from her class, and she goes to her. She doesn't know anything about Deans. She doesn't use Numicon. She doesn't like the bead bar. She's really into the arrow cards. Do you see what I mean? It's haphazard. We need a developmental approach to the use of models and images. We need to take the models and images and be consistent and develop them through the school. And the reason why this is crucial is because actually that greatly improves the penetration of the learning of maths. It means that children can develop their mathematical knowledge as you develop the image. Now let's take some images here. The most important image we give children in their primary education is the image of the number line. And that starts, does it not, in nursery. Have we got any nursery teachers here? Wave at me. So in nursery, you start with your pegged number line, yeah? Am I nodding? You're all nodding, that's brilliant. So you have your number line pegged up. You know what I mean? A washing line with numbers pegged on it, yeah? 1 to 20. And in reception, really crucial, we have this pegged number line. Am I making sense here? This is absolutely crucial. Not only do we have the number track and the numbers down the carpet, we also have the pegged number line. We have the number track out on the playground that they can jump along. This is all about giving children the idea that numbers are not just quantities, they are places in a line or series. It is more important that a 4-year-old knows that 4 comes between 3 and 5 on the number line than that they can count 4 things. Both are important. One-to-one correspondence is very important. But it is very important that they see numbers as places in a line or series. As you can probably tell, I've already said I'm ancient, but I have 6 children, and 3 of them are teachers. That's not bad. That's 50%, you have to admit. Not bad. I think I get some credit for that. And one of them is an early years teacher, and she teaches in an early years unit in Exeter. And this September she came to me and she said, oh, they've done some wonderful work on our unit. You must come in and see, Mum. It's brilliant. So I came in. I said, oh, it looks lovely. And she said, yeah, it's great. We've got this new outside area. It's brilliant. And I said, but Annie, where's your number line? And she said, oh, Mum, it's on the interactive whiteboard. It's amazing. And I'm like, oh, no, hang on. The interactive whiteboard is not always on. And if it is on, it's not always on maths. And if it's on maths, it's not always on the number line, is it? And besides, these are very young children. I want it to be handleable. I want those numbers to come off the line and for them to handle them, put them back on. Do you know what I mean? I said, no number line, no Sunday lunch. Simple as that. Believe me, that number line was up by the end of the week. Now, the fact of the matter is, that is where it starts. It starts in reception and the nursery. When the nursery children come in and one of those numbers has dropped off the line. And they're saying, 7 is gone. And I'm saying, oh, I'm going to have a word with our caretaker. You know. Or they say 2 and 6 have swapped. Oh, it's the naughty elf. He's muddled them up again. I need to attract their attention to this. And then in year 1, out comes the bead bar, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean by the bead bar? Nice big piece of wood with a metal bar. 10 white, 10 red, 10 white. Yeah, are you nodding at me? If you don't know about this, go and Google it. Bead bar. And you've got your bead bar in year 1, and you've got those, they make a great noise as you swish them along, don't they? So you swish along your 10 beads, and you swish along another 10. 10 red, 10 white, 3 red. And don't those 7 red just look like they're itching to get with their friends? So 23 is a really markable place on that bead bar. It has a really fantastic image. And the 7 look like they need to be with their friends, and we push them up and we've got 30. Do you see where I'm coming from? And if you've used the bead bar, then when you come to year 2, and indeed as you go through year 1, you will start to use a landmark line, and you will have 0, 10, 20, etc. Yeah? And now I'm imagining the beads. And I can't imagine the beads if I've never seen them and played with them and pushed them along the line. And so once I get to the landmark line, now I'm really cooking with gas. Because if I can use a landmark line, if I can place numbers on that line, then when it comes to year 3 and I'm wanting to do things like 121 take away 78, I can start thinking, right, 78, how many more to 80? Well, I know my number buns. 2 more. How many more to 100? Again, easy, because I know my number bonds. And then a no-work sum. 100 to 121 is 21. And what an easy calculation that is. 21 and 20 is 41, 43. I can't do that calculation if I haven't grown up with the number track and the bead bar and the landmark line. Do you see where I'm coming from? That number line is developed through the school so that it becomes a really powerful instrument for children to make sense of their maths. Maths is an abstract subject. If you do not have something in your head to help you to make sense of it, you can't do it. So understanding the maths is really crucial. So making sure that you see that number line is developed. We can then use it for division, for multiplication, for all sorts of other things. On Hamilton, we call counting up subtraction frog. And we introduce frog in year 2, year 3, and really get children good at doing counting up subtraction, which is the only way to do decimal subtraction and finding change. And actually a very good way to do a lot, as we'll find later. So that number line is crucial for me. Now, it's not just the number line. There's the number grid, isn't there? The good old 1 to 100 number grid, yeah? Do you know what I mean? Once again, I used to go into year 1 and year 2 classes and I'd see that number grid on the wall. Now I go into year 1 and year 2 classes, I say, where's your number grid? They say it's on the interactive whiteboard. Ah! You know, actually, you need the number grid on your wall. You need to colour the multiples of 10 in red. So all those multiples of 10 down here, what I call with children the T numbers, make a cup of tea, 40, 30, make a cup of tea, 50, do you know what I mean? Because it distinguishes them, does it not, from the teen numbers, which children find very difficult. So all those numbers are coloured in red. So that in year 1, we develop the concept that 29 is nearly a red number. Do you see what I mean? So I say to the children, 29 is nearly... Oh, you're nowhere near as good as my year 1s. I'm very disappointed. So, you know, we get that concept of the nearly numbers absolutely firm in year 1. They understand that. So that when in year 2 or year 3, I'm wanting them to do things like 34 plus 19, the first thing they tell me is 19 is a nearly number. Because I don't want children to add 19 by counting on in ones. I want them to know that adding 19 is easy because it's a nearly number. Do you see where I'm coming from? And that concept gets built in using the number grid very, very early on, really early on, and then developed through the school. And in year 3, I might have a number grid that goes 10, 20, 30, 40, and so on. And if it's a 10 by 10 grid, so there's 10 numbers along here and 10 rows, tell your partner what number will be down here in the bottom right-hand corner. What number will be down here? Tell your partner. Yeah, I hear a few mutters about 999, but no, it's 1,000. And it's 1,000 because what number's here? 100. And if I drew one of those irritating crosses and I said, this is 230, what number would be here? 240, and what number would be here? So what are we counting in as we go across? And what number would be here? So what am I counting in as I go down? Hundreds, yeah. And so that makes a fantastic model for how our wonderful number system works. And in year 4 or year 5, I may have 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, etc. And in that case, what number will be down here in the bottom right-hand corner? 10, yeah, you're absolutely right. And if I drew one of those irritating crosses again, I'd get 3.2. What number would be here? 3.3. So what am I counting in as I go across? Tenths. I love it. I love it because what the kids tend to say to me is 0.1s, and then I say to them, what's 0.1? And they've no idea. I want us to say tenths, tenths. And going down, what number will be here? 4.2. So what am I counting and going down? 1. So you see what an amazing model of how numbers work the number grids are. And there are all sorts of other models that I use. I do use Numicon, which is an excellent model, not a linear model, but excellent for particular things. I certainly use Dean's blocks. I use place value counters. But the question is, how are these models developed through your school? You have a staff meeting and you sit down together and you discuss how the number line goes from reception to year 6. How are you using it in year 3? How are you using it in year 4? How is it being developed through your school? This staff meeting is worth its weight in gold, because you will sort out in that staff meeting consistency. And while you're about it, add 2 other things into that. This doesn't make it harder, it makes it easier. Add 2 other things. The first is, think about pedagogical vocabulary, the vocabulary of teaching maths, by which I don't just mean the mathematical vocabulary, I mean things like spider and frog. What's spider? Well, every year 1 teacher here knows what spider is. We have a plastic spider, don't we, in year 1? And he lives, I see a lot of nodding, he lives on the top of the number grid. And spiders come down from the ceiling on their web. You scare them so they go back up again. Spiders live on the top. In our house, you can lie in bed and watch them. Spiders live on the top of the number grid. 3, 13, 23, 33, 43, 53. Do you see what I mean? I have a lovely plastic spider that does this, don't you? You can use a real one, but it's not as good. You know, they start on the top of the grid and they come down and they count 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, yeah? The hard one, isn't it, is 7, 17. That's the hard one. 27, 37, 47, 57, that's easier. Do you see what I mean? I want year 1 children to learn to count in tens. And spiders count in? You're coming along? So it is the case that when I say to, I'm doing 34 plus 21 in year 2, and I go spider, spider first, the year 2s know exactly what I'm talking about. They know that I don't want 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. I don't want any of that. I want children to know. I never want children to add 10 by counting on in 1s. You don't add 10 by counting on in 1s. I don't want them to. So I need children to understand that it's no harder to add 10 than it is to add 1. And right from the off. So when I say spider to the year 2 children, they know what I mean. If I've got a couple of year 3 children who've forgotten, I'm like spider, spider first. And that goes through the school. And once I teach them that we can subtract by counting up, and that's a really useful technique, then when I come to do 13.1 minus 8.76, and I want them to understand that we can count on. And how much do we have to add to 8.76 to get to 9? And because we've been really good at our number bonds, we're really good at that. And once I know that that's 0.24, it becomes a very easy calculation. And when I'm doing that with year 5s, I'm going frog. And they know what I mean by frog, because ever since they were in year 3, frog has been hopping up that number line and counting up. Do you see what I mean? It may not occur in any maths dictionary, but to me, spider, crocodile, frog, these are all the techniques by which I make sure that children remember strategies and that I can say to them, frog, and they know what I'm talking about. Because it's developed through our school as a consistent strategy. Do you see where I'm coming from? And basically, I think that vocabulary, the pedagogical vocabulary is as important for good primary maths as is the mathematical vocabulary. Both are really crucial. The third thing you can put into your staff meeting is consistency of layout. When you are laying out your calculations, how are you laying them out? And is it different when they move from year 3 to year 4 and from year 4 to year 5? Because that's a disaster. And this brings me to the third thing that we can learn from the Pacific Rim countries. And the third thing that we can learn is about, I'll put it this way, overlearning. Now, overlearning is about rehearsing, embedding, deepening our understanding of crucial concepts or key skills that are what I call mathematical best buys. Some things you teach are what I call dead ends. If I'm teaching something and this group just don't really get it, some things, it matters, of course it matters because they haven't got it, but it's actually not going to hiccup their maths education. It matters today, but it's not going to matter when we're doing other subjects, other areas of maths. That is what I call a dead end. So Roman numerals is a definite dead end. But there are others, long division. You can get a whole maths degree without being able to do long division. I am living proof of this. So, long division is a dead end. If you can't do it, you can't do that question on the SATs, but other than that, it's not going to hiccup your maths education. Do you see what I mean? Some things are best buys. They come into everything. They're like that dress or that shirt that you buy that you wear every day until it literally has to be, it's shredding, isn't it? Well, kids do that a lot. I still do it, but kids do it a lot, don't they? Favourite t-shirt syndrome. Some things are best buys. They come up again and again. If you can't do them, it's going to hold up every area of your maths. Do you see what I mean? Now, place value is like that. Place value, if you don't understand place value, is going to hold up every area of your maths. It's going to really matter. With my 15-year-olds, I give them a little test at the beginning of the year. It's their GCSE year, so it's kind of crucial. And one of the things I ask them to do is 3.4 times 10. Oh dear. Most of them get it wrong. What do you think they give me as an answer? Yeah, absolutely. No problem. 3.40, bingo. What rule are they applying? Yeah, but the problem is that you never say that. No teacher ever says add a zero. We don't say it because we know it leads to that error. So why do children pick that up? Because we don't teach away from it. When we're in year 3, we're teaching them to multiply by 10. We give them 13 times 10, 24 times 10, 38 times 10. And the children are sitting there and they're writing 13 times 10 equals 130. 23 times 10 equals 230. 38 times 10 equals 380. And then, these two good girls working together and they're writing them down and one turns to the other. She says, these are really easy. All you do is add a zero. And of course, they're dead right. But we need them to be doing those calculations on the place value grid. So we've got our ones and our tens and our hundreds and our tenths, which we write 0.1, and our hundredths, which we write 0.01. And I want that place value grid, at least that bit of it, used in year 3. So when I'm doing 13 times 10, the children see that the digits move. And that's what I always say to kids. The point doesn't move. That's the point. It's a point. The digits move. Now, if you are writing those on the place value grid in year 3, In year 4, when you come to do 3.4 times 10, you will understand that the digits move. We have to use images and models before children need them, not after. And this comes really clear when we look at calculation. So let's just consider calculation, because to get over learning, there's an important lessons here. Some years ago, children were given 2003 minus 5 equals in one of the international tests. And bless them, they're all the little darlings. They wrote 2003 minus 5, draw a line, nice vertical column subtraction. Nick Gibb must be very happy. How many do you think will get it right? 8 and 9-year-olds, 9-year-olds, how many will get it right using column subtraction? Disastrous, isn't it? Teachers are rather pessimistic, you know. People always say to me, oh, 10%, 20%. No, actually, it's 2/3. I think that's quite good. I think it's quite miraculous that 2/3 get it right using a column subtraction. It is clinically insane to do that using a column subtraction, isn't it? Even if this were 875, I wouldn't want children to do it using column subtraction, would you? No, because it's highly error prone. I always say to children, if the first number is looking at you, don't do a column subtraction. Because if it's looking at you, it's not going to be good news. That question actually is the 2003 minus 5 is not a subtraction. It is a place value question. It depends on the fact that you know what the number before 2000 is. And as I have to tell my 15-year-olds, it's not 999. So that kind of comes as news to them. Now, actually, 2003 minus 875, 875, if I do a counting up subtraction, it is a really easy calculation, because actually $25 takes me to 900, and 100 more to 1,000, and 1,003 to 2,000. That's a very easy calculation. 1,128. Do you see where I'm coming from? Now, what's the percentage error if I do it as a counting up subtraction? What we on Hamilton will call a frog. What's the percentage error? Tiny, less than 1%. What's the percentage error if they do it as a column subtraction? 33%. This isn't rocket science. You are going to be assessed on how many of your children get this question right.
The trouble is, though, in the year 6 tests, they've got to be able to use that method.
Well,
you wouldn't get a mark for that.
No, that's not true, because it's only 1 mark, and you don't, so therefore there's no method mark, so they can use any method they like. It's not true. It is for multiplication, because there's 2 marks. If you don't use the long multiplication formal algorithm, you don't pick up the method mark. Do you see where I'm coming from? I do agree with you, and it is scandalous. You should get the marks if you get it right. But the fact is that it is for addition and subtraction, I would draw your attention to the fact they're only one mark. So you just want them to get it right. So if out of every 100 children, 99 are going to get it right doing it this way, and only 66 are going to get it right doing that way, you're wise to go for this. You know, some of your children would probably get it right both ways. So but we're coming to that question, and the SATs question is a really important question. I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm agreeing. So when I teach column addition, 378 plus 650, I'll have different figures now, 4. Right. When I'm teaching this, on Hamilton and indeed on Abacus, what we do is we teach it by first of all expanding it. We've got 370 and 8, and we've got 650 and 4. Now that has rehearsed their understanding of 3-digit numbers. And now I draw a line. And you'll notice that I've drawn the line with the space here. And I do that deliberately, because if you don't leave a space here, where do you write your carry digits? If you write them small here, they get muddled in and all the untidy boys can't see them. If you write them big here, children forget them. If you write them big down here, they definitely forget them. So to minimise errors, we leave a nice space here. When you expand this addition, you say 4 and 8 is 12, so I've got 2 and 10. And again, I've made the place value explicit. And here I've got 130, so I've got 30 and 100. Do you see what I mean? And so we do it. Now, I teach first expanded, then compact, and children move fairly rapidly from expanded to compact. Now, here's an interesting thing. If I don't bother to do that, if I think, oh, I can't be bothered with that, I can see that Abacus is doing it or Hamilton is doing it, but I don't really like it, I'm not going to do it, and I just go straight to this, it is highly probable that the same success rate in column addition will result. The children will be equally successful at doing column addition. So you might say, well, Ruth, if you know that from the research, why have you done this and then this? And I'll tell you why. It's for exactly the same reason that I write the multiplication by 10 in year 3 on a place value grid. It's because I'm thinking ahead. When we come to do subtraction, 321 minus 178, I want to expand it. 320 and 1 minus 178. Now it is crucial that I have it in an expanded form. And so I'm now saying, and of course this is a complicated algorithm, isn't it? Because I start with a lie. 1 subtract 8, you can't. Well, that is a total lie, because you can. You all know you can, because you've all got overdrafts. So you know you can subtract 8 from 1, and the answer is -7, and we all know that. But nevertheless, we start with a lie. 1 subtract 8, you can't. So I take 10 out of this column, and that gives me 11 in this column, and now I can subtract my 8. Now, if I do it in expanded form, like this, it is going to be much easier for the children to understand what is going on, especially if I use a model, like Dean's blocks or place value counters. If I don't do the expanded subtraction before I teach the compact, which is much harder, if I don't do the expanded, I will get a much lower success rate. So the reason I do the expanded in the addition is, 1, it helps the addition. 2, and importantly, it includes overlearning. When I teach this, I am reinforcing place value. I am overlearning the place value. It's like layering another layer of learning. I am hammering it in. It becomes a robust concept. And thirdly, it means that when I come to teach the subtraction, they're already used to expanded. It's not news to them. They've already got it. And if I'm in a classroom where I've got year 3 and year 4, I can do the two together. Do the addition and the subtraction. And it works really well. So, interestingly, the same happens with multiplication. I want to do something like 368 times 6. I want to do that first of all using a grid. 360 and 8 times 6. 6 lots of 300. Look how it is expanded. It must be 1800. 3 lots of 60. Can't be 36 because I've got 6 tens. So it must be 360 and 6 lots of 8. And so I'm getting the place value is utterly visible. As soon as I start doing it like this, the place value starts to be implicit. And I'm no longer even saying 6 300s, I'm saying 6 3s. So it's no wonder we get errors. A lot of children will fall by the wayside when you move from that to that. Because it's so much harder because the place value is implicit. Now, I like to have in my head not just the concept of best buys and dead ends, but the concept that some algorithms, some procedures are error-proof. And some procedures are error-prone. And some algorithms have the place value explicit. And some algorithms have the place value implicit. Now, if I start sorting procedures onto this grid, I can see why some are so much harder for children than others. So, for example, frog is error-proof and the place value is explicit. Every time I do a frog subtraction and I am counting up, I am saying how many to the next 10, or how many to the next 1, or how many to the next 100. Do you see what I mean? Every single time you do a frog subtraction, if they've done 20 today, 20 times they've had to think how many to the next 10, how many to the next 100. I am reinforcing those number bonds and that place value with every single subtraction. That's what I call a best buy. You know, that's overlearning. I am nailing that concept down. Every time I do a grid multiplication, the place value is explicit. I'm making the number 3.78. 3 whole numbers, 7/10, 8/100. I'm nailing that concept down. I'm also rehearsing my tables facts. Expanded column addition is in here. The place value is explicit and it's error-proof. Compact column addition is actually error-proof, but the place value is implicit. Expanded column subtraction is in here. It's error-prone, but the place value is explicit. Compact column subtraction is down here. It is error-prone and the place value is implicit. It's obvious to any teacher that if algorithms are in this category, kids are likely to get them right. If they're in this category, we're going to have a lot more children getting them wrong and finding it hard. Unfortunately, all Nick Gibbs' favourite algorithms are down here. That's very annoying. And it makes life hard. But what it does mean is we have to think about what we're teaching, when, and why. And one reason for teaching something is because it's going to nail down a good key concept or a key skill or a strategy. And then when you move on, you've got it, you know. And that's called overlearning. And they are very good at that in the Pacific Rim. They do a lot of it. And we actually have to, you know, long multiplication is in here. Grid multiplication is here. Interestingly, short division is in here. It's actually, the place value is implicit, but actually it's pretty error-proof. Kids can do it. I mean, it's annoying. I find that a bit annoying, but it's true. You know, that is a fact. So it is the case that I've given you 3 things so far that we can learn. One is memorisation, quick maths, every single day, on the timetable. And by the way, the infants are not off the hook on that one. Infants are not off the hook. You have to do your phonics, so you don't have 10 minutes a day spare, but 5-minute fillers. A little spiral-bound book, 5-minute fillers. You're waiting to go into the hall. You're lined up outside the hall with your year 2s. And, you've got to wait. So I'm going down that line and I am saying, I'm going to say a number and you're going to tell me what goes with it to make 10. And I'm putting my hand on their heads and I'm saying 6. And you're saying, way too slow, go to the back. You're going down that line and you're just doing an activity. I'm going to say a number, you're going to say the next number. These are 5-minute fillers. You come back after PE, you've got 5 minutes before play, you don't want to get anything out. 5-minute fillers, little spiral-bound book, pick one up if you want, or email into Hamilton. £5, they're worth their weight in gold. They're for the infants. Keep those memorised facts absolutely simmering. Juniors, quick maths. The second thing I said was a consistent approach to the use of images and models. Develop them through the school. And while you're about it, get a consistent approach to the pedagogical vocabulary and the layout of your calculations. If I'm leaving a space above the line for addition, make sure it's through the school. I don't really mind how you lay out your calculations. I just think you should be consistent. Because every time you change, you are going to lose children. And the third thing I've said is overlearning. We must nail down key concepts and skills as we go. Every piece of teaching, every algorithm needs to nail down those key concepts and skills. So they cannot escape without having them. And just so you know about that, on the Hamilton site, there are a list of key skills for each age range. These are not your targets. They're not what you shoot for. They are the ground you stand on. They are the things that I assess in April. Have all my year 4 children got these key skills? Because in April, I look at them against the key skills. Any children that haven't got them, before they leave my class, I'm going to make sure they have. So you are making sure those key skills are in place before they move up into the next. These are the ones that we want all children in year 4 to have. All children in year 3. They're the bottom line. They're the things you go to the wall for. They're not the targets we're aiming for. Do you see what I mean? Different thing. So that's 3 things. I said I would give you 5 things. The last 2, you'll be relieved to know, are very quick. Constant intervention. We need to rethink intervention. Because the fact of the matter is that, like it or lump it, we are now in the lift. And that means that actually we have to use a keep up, don't catch up approach. Every year, every week, we need to look and see which children are behind on that skill. How can we intervene precisely at this moment on that skill? What intervention can we provide? And there are some key points here vis-à-vis Ofsted. We cannot take children out of their maths lesson for intervention. That is no longer acceptable. We cannot have a separate programme of intervention. They're all doing a separate programme. All the children in year 3 are supposed to be on the year 3 objective. Now, that's fine. Ofsted inspector comes in, all my children are supposed to be doing the same objective. It's just not possible. It simply isn't possible at the moment. So what do? What I do is I have prerequisite skills. So we're all doing we're in year 4, we're all doing decimals. We're all doing 1 place and a few 2-place decimals. But, these children, I've mentioned them before, haven't I, my darlings? These children, there's no way they can think about decimals because we haven't really got hundreds, tens and units sorted. Do you know what I mean? We're still thinking about hundreds, aren't we? Still thinking about hundreds. You see, they're nodding. We're still thinking about hundreds, tens and ones. So what I know is that actually understanding hundreds, tens and ones, being really clear about that, is a prerequisite for understanding tenths and hundredths. So we are all on the same objective, but they're doing a prerequisite. They're part of my teaching, and what I've done in the teaching is I've done a bit of pre-teaching with them. I've managed to nab them during assembly or before school starts or during playtime, whenever. I've nabbed them and I've done a little quarter of an hour bit of pre-teaching. When I've kind of gone into this lesson and used one of the same examples I'm going to use in the actual lesson, well, you might think this, oh, really? Because I tell you what, then when I start my lesson, instead of this lot screaming out immediately, oh, I don't understand this, don't know what she's doing, I haven't got a clue, they all think, oh, hang on a minute, I can do this. And they're actually answering the question. And that's amazing, that gives us a big boost. And then we've got an activity which is actually suitable then. It's on a prerequisite and we're leading into it. To me, I can't wave a wand and say all your children have to access this same objective because all of them may not be able to access it. So you need to be thinking about prerequisite skills. The notion of prerequisite skills on a weekly basis becomes very, very important. You know, if we're doing frog subtraction, maybe these children are just adding to the next 10. You know, that's a prerequisite. So for each skill, it will be different because we will be targeting prerequisite skills. But we have to intervene. Keep up, don't catch up. That has to be the key. And the intervention has to be specific to what we're teaching in that week. So we're starting to think about having the children move as a cohort. And that is a new way of thinking, and it's going to be quite challenging. Because unlike the Pacific Rim countries, England is not homogenous. It is a diverse society, another thing that I actually value immensely. But it means that we have more challenges. And unlike Singapore, where the lowest socioeconomic 20% are not in school, your schools might look rather different if the lowest socioeconomic 20%. I'm not suggesting this is a good idea, by the way. I'm saying that it is a fact that it's different. So you don't have a homogenous group. They're not all on the same page. But we need to be thinking about it. It is a fair criticism, I think, that it is the case that some children are not proceeding at the level would to be expected for their age range. So we need to do something about trying to make that happen. We are all trying to do something about making that happen. But we need maybe to think about this a bit, we need to think about it outside the box. You know what I mean? This gives us an opportunity to think a bit outside the box. The final thing, the fifth thing, is about practice. When I first came into teaching, and it's about embedded learning. I think that doesn't look like it's right. Maybe it does look like it's right. It does look like it's right. When I first came into teaching, I was told, if children can do 3 examples and get them right, you don't need to do any more. Does anybody else remember that? It used to be said a lot. I mean, you probably have to be a little bit older than you all look to remember it. But it was said, trust me. And, you know, that is rubbish. It's true that if they can do 3 and get them right, they probably have grasped what it is. But if you want them to remember it longer than 24 hours, then they don't have to do 3, they have to do 30. Because otherwise it doesn't embed. And I need children to remember things and to remember processes and procedures. So therefore, I need them to do quite a few examples. 3 or 4 doesn't cut it. And once again, this is a change of attitude. Thing is, as a teacher, in English, I've always had this attitude. If I'm doing recounts, and you lot haven't, I'm picky on you, aren't I? If I'm doing recounts and this lot have not finished their recount, then when we get to the afternoon and we're doing marbling, I'm saying, while you're waiting for the tray to be clear, could you just finish off your recounts because you didn't finish them this morning? And you're nodding at me because you all know that we do finishing off, don't we? But the trouble is we don't do that in maths. If in the morning I'm saying, right, you go off, and I've given you guys a textbook page, and I've said, you know, can you get on with that? And you spent half the lesson looking for your flipping rubber, And you went, you've got it down to a fine art. You went off to the loo for half of it, And so they came back and she's done 3 and she's done 2. I don't in the afternoon say, right, well, could you finish off that maths? Or at least I'm less likely to, but I should be. And actually, I should have some expectations here. I should be saying, do you know what? You only did 3 this morning, so I want you to take your maths book home and finish those, or I'm going to copy the page and I want you to finish them for homework. And you're saying to me, oh, I can't do that, miss, because I've got brownies tonight, and anyway, my nan's coming over and I can't do it. And I say, well, that's fine. It's really good that we've got playtime before maths tomorrow. Because what can happen is you can come in and do your maths before we start the maths lesson. Well, if she misses one playtime doing that, next time she won't spend the lesson looking for a rubber, will she? You see what I mean? My expectation is you do 10 of them. If you don't do 10 of them, well, we're going to have to think of a way that you do. Now, I'm not saying this is an easy answer, but I am saying this. We have to embed the learning, and that means they do have to do more practice. And there is a question mark here. Now, I asked in DFE about this, and I specifically asked NCETM about it, because I was told the Chinese maths lessons are only 35 minutes. And look how good they are in just their 35 minutes that all these children can do wonderful maths. And I said, when do they do their practice? And they said, at home. And I said, how are we going to do that in lots of the schools that I work in? They will not be done at home. And the minister's view is they will if you ask them to do. I strongly recommend that you ask them to. I don't have that view. I've worked in primary education for an awful long time, and much of my career has been in parental involvement. I am a big fan of getting parents involved, but I know that in the schools that I'm working in currently, some of which are in an urban context, some of which are in a small town context, and some of which are on Dartmoor in Devon, in all 3 groups of schools, I have a group of children who will not do that work at home. I don't ask you to milk my cows. Why are you asking me to read with my child? It's what we get. The fact is that I'm not teaching in China. I'm not teaching in Singapore. I'm teaching on Dartmoor in Devon or in Witney in Oxfordshire. And actually the context is different. I cannot rely on all the practice being done at home. It's not going to happen. But I have to think outside the box about how I'm going to get that practice done. I'm not answering the problem for you. I'm simply saying we have 5 things we have to do. Some are within our control and some aren't. Memorisation, get that quick maths on the timetable. Make sure you're doing it. You can do that. That's not difficult. Secondly, every day on the timetable, every junior class, quick maths. Secondly, make sure you have that staff meeting. Don't postpone it. Have that staff meeting where you are getting consistency in models and images, really nailing that down. Thirdly, overlearning. Get those mathematical best buys on your timetable. Make sure they're in your teaching. Every time you do one of those algorithms, nail down those key concepts, those key procedures. Fourthly, constant intervention. Keep up, don't catch up. Think about how we do the interventions. How effective are we? In year 1, which are the 6 children who aren't really there? What can we do to get them there before year 2? At least on the key skills. Let's face it, I don't really mind if a year 2 pupil can't name a rectangle or doesn't understand the difference between a cone and a cuboid. But I do really mind if they don't understand that in 17 I have 10 and 7 ones. That really does matter. So there are some key things. And that's about overlearning. Constant intervention, overlearning, constant intervention, and finally, embedding your learning. How are we going to think about that? Now, to me, English primary education English primary education is not just not broken, it's excellent. It's absolutely excellent. But I definitely think that it's always good to learn. And we do have a challenging new curriculum, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we are in danger of doing that. There's a lot of danger of doing that. I don't want children in 3 years' time not to enjoy their primary education, do you? And actually, I do want teachers to enjoy their primary education. And I always tell this at the end of sessions when I'm doing training, and I apologise if you've heard it before, but it impressed me so much, and it must be at least 10 years ago now. I was running into a Coventry school. I was late, which wouldn't surprise anybody who knows me, and I was running through the playground, and the kids were all coming out. And this rather hyper 7-year-old stopped me, and he said, "Are you the maths lady?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you want to know something?" I thought, "No, I don't." But I didn't say that. I said, yes, go on. He said, if you start with 2 and you go right on doubling, eventually you get to 1024. I was like, that's amazing. And he said, I learned that in bed. I think that is fantastic. I was the sort of kid that went on doubling numbers just to see where you got. I think it is fantastic. For me, I would give that school an outstanding on that alone, because that to me is what it's all about. You like playing with your maths. You go home, you like your maths. That seems to me to be utterly crucial. Utterly crucial. So we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we have things we can do which actually may help in delivering this very challenging new curriculum. We are going to be putting up a new assessment tracker on the site during the summer. And so if you are interested in that, have a look. It will be for English and maths. We are also redoing our mixed age range plans to make sure that we are on the same objective with both year groups, which is a challenge, because we know that that is the stress now to try and do that. So we are redoing completely our mixed age range mathematics plans. So keep an eye on the Hamilton site, because that's kind of useful. Pretty much everything that we do, I work in partnership with, I also write Abacus, so same things apply, but I work in partnership with as many schools, as many teachers as possible. So if schools are interested, email us. We like getting emails. We love getting emails. And so if you've got suggestions, if you've got things you want to say, you know where to find us. We can be found at Hamilton. I'm not going to take questions because I've run over time. Not as badly over time as I sometimes do. You should be glad. I can go on all night. But I'm going to call it a day now. Thank you very, very much for coming.